Hey, what's up everyone? Yesterday I made a Malaysian style chicken curry. It was a Malaysian chicken curry that I normally eat throughout in Malaysia. But after I make my curries, I always leave it overnight because I believe that's when the flavors really develop. So like I mentioned yesterday, I wasn't sure if I was gonna make a naan bread or a roti canai to eat with my curry. But as you can see from the title, I've decided to make naan bread. I always enjoy making bread, and because I cannot wait to eat my chicken curry, I'm using a very simple, easy naan bread recipe. And by the way, a piece of naan bread in Thailand, guess how much it costs? 90 baht, about $3. Okay, so here are the ingredients. I have here 500 grams of all-purpose flour, and then 8 cloves of garlic, 2 teaspoons of active yeast, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, 180 grams of yogurt, 3/4 cup milk. Make sure that your milk and your yogurt is room temperature. This is about like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 tablespoons of butter. This is to be spread on top of the naan bread after finished cooking. So you can use as much butter as you want or use as less as you want. This is just a bunch of coriander for garnish. And the final ingredient is a 1/4 cup of warm water. This water is about 105 to 110 degrees. You need warm water so that the yeast will bloom better. And to feed the growth of the yeast, I'm gonna add the teaspoon of sugar. And just stir it up, break up the large clumps of yeast. There are naan recipes that do not use yeast, but I really like the taste of yeast, so I added yeast in. So you can see already my yeast is bubbling nicely. So it's a good sign that my yeast is active. So after you break up all the large lumps, and now we leave this alone for 10 to 15 minutes, let it do its work.
2,000 years later.
Okay, check out my yeast. It's almost on the rim of my bowl. All right, so it's time to form the dough. First thing I'm gonna do is add the teaspoon of salt. And then just stir in the salt. Throw in my yeast because it keeps growing. Go, get in there, boys. That must have been some really fresh yeast. Just stir that in. I'm gonna add my room temperature milk. Same thing with the yogurt. The yogurt has to be room temperature, okay? Put that all in. Try and collect all the loose flour as much as you can. We need oil. So I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of oil. That's 1 tablespoon. And that's 2 tablespoons, okay. You can most certainly use a stand mixer with a dough hook. It'll definitely make your life easier. But because this is such a small amount, this will make 12 naan bread, by the way. So it's a small amount. Because look, a dough ball has already started forming. Now, as you can see, this is a very, very sticky dough. That's because in bread baking terms, this is a high hydration dough. I use a lot of milk and also use a lot of yogurt. But what it means in terms of yumminess is that the inside of the bread is gonna be open and airy, but the outside is gonna be thin and crispy. So another tip is to always keep one hand clean, just in case you need to answer the phone. All right, so I mixed it. What I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna let this rest for about 10 minutes. And after those 10 minutes, it's gonna be easier for me to mix further. Just cover it up with a damp towel so it doesn't dry, so that the top doesn't dry. All right, as you can see, I moved over to my countertop here. There's gonna be some serious work worked on, or working, or whatever. Anyways, so take a look at my dough. So my dough isn't as sticky as before because it's rested a little bit, so it should be easier to work with. I'm gonna dust my countertop with some flour, add a little bit of flour on my hands, and then I'm gonna start kneading this bad boy. So you just want to push, roll over, push, and roll over and push, and just keep on doing this until you get a nice, shiny, non-sticky dough ball. Now, if you find your dough is still very uncooperative, add just a teaspoon of flour. Because I live in Thailand, it's really humid, and that can really affect the texture of the dough. I'm just gonna add a teaspoon of flour on the bottom just to help my dough form a little bit easier. As you can see, it's much smoother, it's much tighter, and not as sticky as before. So as you saw today, my dough was really extra sticky. So I added in a total of about 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, just a little bit at a time, also including the flour that I had to dust the table. And it also took me a little bit longer to form this dough. It took me about total time about 12 minutes. So for you folks at home doing this, if your home is a lot less humid, it should take about 5 to 8 minutes for your dough to look like this, which is, you know, easy to work with, not sticky at all to the hand, and easy to shape into a dough ball. Okay, so now I need to proof this dough until it doubles in size. Depending on where you live, it could take 30 minutes up to 2 hours, because the dough will rise faster if you live in a warm place like I do in Thailand, right? So now, if you don't have the time, you can actually stick this into your refrigerator overnight and let it double in size. A lot of bakers refrigerate their dough overnight for proofing because it actually makes the bread taste better. Just make sure that you seal the bowl tightly with plastic wrap or a heavy lid if you have it. But for me, all I need to do is to just leave it here for about 30 minutes to an hour.
One eternity later.
Okay, so my dough has doubled in size. I really enjoy that yeasty smell. Whoops. Just gonna roll it out a little bit more. So I'm just gonna shape my dough into a nice soft little ball by tucking the folds underneath and just go around and round. Pop it down. I'm gonna make an indentation with my finger, and when it pops back out like that, it means that this has properly risen. So as I mentioned, this dough will make about 12 pieces of naan bread, but I'm just gonna make 6. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna weigh it. I've done this a lot of times, and I know that this is gonna weigh roughly about 900 grams. So I'm gonna freeze half of this dough for next time. Make up your mind, 907 grams. So I'm just gonna cut this in half to 450, yeah? And I'm just gonna tightly wrap this for next time. So I'm gonna make 6 dough balls that is 75 grams each. They don't have to be perfectly 75 grams. I mean, even if you're off by a few grams, close as you can is enough. Okay, and I'm just gonna let these proof for another 10 minutes. Okay, so while these are proofing for 10 minutes, I'm going to work on chopping up my garlic and cilantro. Okay, that's good enough. Now for the cilantro, I found some old pieces of cilantro inside my fridge, and it's still perfectly usable. A lot of supermarkets throw out a lot of perfectly edible foods, and you know, this is kind of unconscionable because there's a lot of people starving out there. So because it's still edible, I'm going to use this. I'm also going to be using some of this to garnish the top of my curry chicken. Now I'm just going to lightly oil my countertop. Just like that. Got my naan. I'm going to try and knock out as much of the air bubbles as I can. And traditional naan shape is like a rectangular shape, so I'm going to make it rectangular. So this is the pan that I'm going to use. I'm going to start heating it up right now. Spread garlic on top. Just push it in with my fingers. Take some cilantro and spread it out. Push those in. and immediately place it on top of my hot pan. And this should take about 1 to 2 minutes each side. Flip when I see a lot of bubbles rising up, so this is about 1 minute. So I'm gonna cook the other side for about another minute or so. Okay, so that's it.
Few inches later.
While this is nice and hot, I'm just gonna dab my butter in. You know, if you've never done a bread recipe before and you want to try it out, you know, make this because it's so easy to do. Spoon out some of my curry. I like plenty of gravy and a big old piece of chicken for Dad. And top off with some cilantro. And there you go. This is my breakfast in Kuala Lumpur every day. Every morning, this is what I eat. Whether I stay there for 3 days, 5 days, I always eat this every single morning with a hot cup of teh halia with milk. Let's take a look at this. Ooh, outside is nice and crusty. It's nice and fluffy. And my favorite part are these like little charred bits. Oh, time to dig in. Nice and garlicky. Goes perfectly well with the gravy from the curry chicken. Currently, we may not be able to travel to Kuala Lumpur, but I tell you, you can easily bring Kuala Lumpur to your home kitchen. Try these recipes out. I know you love it. And if you ever get a chance, go over and visit Malaysia. This is a delicious, delicious meal.